started with a notification, just a simple chime from my phone in the middle of the night. I wasn't even fully awake when I checked it, expecting some pointless spam or a work email that could wait until morning. But when my eyes adjusted to the glow of the screen, I froze. Ethan Walker updated his profile picture. That wasn't possible. Ethan had been missing for 7 years. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, my mouth suddenly dry. His new profile picture looked fresh, like it had been taken just days ago. He was older, his face leaner, but it was unmistakably him. The comments were already coming in. Confused friends. Some just typing, "What the hell?" Others asking, "Is this a joke?" I clicked on his profile. The page looked normal at first, but then a message popped up. From him. "I'm here." My stomach twisted into knots. I shouldn't have responded. I should have locked my phone, gone back to sleep, and convinced myself I was dreaming. But I didn't. I typed back, "Where?" The reply came instantly. "Come find me." And then a location pin dropped. A place I never thought I'd have to go back to. The last place Ethan was ever seen. I sat there, staring at my phone, my hands clammy. The location pin flickered on my screen, an abandoned gas station just outside town. The same place Ethan was last seen the night he disappeared. I hesitated. This had to be a joke. Someone hacking his account. Someone messing with us. But if it was, why me? I should have ignored it. I should have put the phone down. Instead, I grabbed my keys. The drive out was silent, the kind of quiet that presses in on you, making you hyper-aware of every breath, every shift in the shadows. The road stretched into the dark, broken only by the occasional flicker of my headlights against cracked pavement. Then I saw it. The gas station. It had been abandoned for years, left to rot after a fire gutted the convenience store. The windows were boarded up, and weeds had claimed the pavement. My headlights cast long, twisted shadows against the structure, making it look more alive than it should. I parked, my fingers gripping the steering wheel so tight they ached. Then my phone buzzed. Another message from Ethan. "You're close." A cold wave of unease washed over me. I looked up at the gas station, scanning the lot. No movement, no signs of life. But someone had sent that message. And I wasn't alone. I killed the engine and sat there, the hum of my car fading into silence. The gas station loomed in front of me, a hollow shell of what it used to be. My gut twisted. Every instinct told me to turn around, but I couldn't shake the feeling. What if it really was Ethan? I reached for my phone, my fingers trembling. "I'm here," the same message as before. But this time it didn't come through the app. This time it was a text. I stared at the number. It wasn't saved in my contacts, but the area code was local. I hadn't seen Ethan's number in years, but I still remembered the first 3 digits. This wasn't right. His phone should be dead, disconnected, wiped from every database. But here it was. And then, before I could think, another text. "Come inside." A wave of nausea rolled through me. I looked up at the station again, at the shattered remnants of the gas pumps, the door barely hanging on its hinges. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. The air was thick with the smell of oil and mildew. My footsteps crunched against the gravel as I made my way forward, the night swallowing every sound except the distant buzz of a flickering streetlight. I pushed the door open. Inside, the place was a wreck. The walls were scorched black from the fire, shelves half collapsed under the weight of time. Old newspapers littered the floor, their headlines yellowed and crumbling. I scanned the room, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. No sign of Ethan. And then, from the back of the store, a noise, a shuffle, like someone shifting their weight just out of sight. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. "Ethan?" I called, my voice barely above a whisper. Silence. I took a cautious step forward, my sneakers brushing against broken glass. The doorway to the storage room gaped open, a yawning black hole. My phone buzzed again. A photo. I hesitated before opening it. It was dark, blurry, but I could make out someone. Sitting on the ground, legs folded, face hidden in the shadows. The only source of light was the dim glow of their phone screen, casting an eerie greenish hue over their hands. My hands. I looked down at my own arms, at the phone gripped tight between my fingers. My stomach lurched. The photo was taken from behind me. I wasn't alone. I spun around so fast I nearly dropped my phone. The store was empty, or at least it looked empty. The air felt heavier now, thick with something I couldn't name. My breathing was too loud, my pulse hammering in my ears. I scanned the aisles, the broken shelves, the shattered glass on the floor. There was nowhere for anyone to hide. But someone had to be here. Someone had taken that photo. Then, footsteps. Outside. I whipped my head toward the front of the store just as headlights washed over the broken windows. A car. Someone was pulling up. A door slammed shut and then, "Hello!" A voice. Familiar. I stepped cautiously toward the entrance, my heart still racing. And then I saw him. Mark. He stood just outside his car, eyes darting around the lot, shoulders tense like he was expecting something to jump out at him. "What the hell are you doing here?" I asked, stepping out onto the pavement. Mark's face was pale. "I got a message," he said, holding up his phone. My stomach dropped. "From Ethan?" He nodded. "Told me to come here." My skin prickled. "What did it say exactly?" Mark swallowed hard, then turned his phone toward me. The screen showed a message thread. "I'm here." The exact same words. The same text I had received. Then another message. "Come inside." I felt like the ground beneath me had tilted. "Mark, when did you get that message?" I asked. He hesitated. "About 10 minutes ago. I was already heading this way when I saw your car." I exhaled slowly, trying to push down the panic rising in my chest. If Mark got the message 10 minutes ago, then that meant the photo, the one taken behind me. Whoever sent it was still here, watching. Mark must have seen the look on my face, because his expression darkened. "What's going on, man?" I turned my phone around and showed him the photo. His face went white. He looked over my shoulder, back toward the store. "Someone's messing with us," he said, his voice unsteady. I shook my head. "Then where are they?" Silence. The gas station was completely still. No movement. No sign of anyone. Just the quiet hum of Mark's idling car and the distant rustling of the wind through the weeds. And then, both our phones buzzed at the same time. We looked down. A new message. From Ethan. Just 2 words. "Come closer." Mark and I stood frozen, the glow of our phone screens casting eerie light across our faces. The same 2 words stared back at us. "Come closer." Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. We just stood there, the night pressing in, thick and heavy. Mark swallowed hard. "This is messed up." I could hear it in his voice, fear. Real, raw fear. It wasn't just me. I turned back toward the gas station. The open doorway was a black void, a gaping wound in the burned-out building. Felt wrong, like we were being pulled toward something we weren't meant to see. Mark took a shaky breath. "What if?" He hesitated. "What if it's actually him?" I turned to him. "Ethan disappeared 7 years ago. He didn't just go off the grid, he was gone. No calls, no sightings. Nothing." Mark exhaled sharply. "Then who the hell is sending these messages?" I didn't have an answer, but I knew one thing. If we didn't walk away now, we'd find out. Mark shifted uncomfortably. "Look, man, maybe we just call the cops." I almost laughed. "And tell them what?" "That we got a Facebook message from a missing person and now we're scared." He rubbed his face. "I mean, yeah, kinda." I shook my head. "They won't do anything. And if we leave now, we'll never know the truth." Mark let out a slow breath, then gave me a reluctant nod. We stepped forward together. The inside of the gas station felt colder than before, like the air had been sucked out of it. The only sound was the crunch of broken glass under our feet. Mark pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, bouncing off charred walls and rusted shelves. "Ethan?" Mark called. His voice echoed. No response. We moved deeper inside. I could feel my pulse in my throat. Every shadow looked like it was hiding something. Every dark corner felt like it was breathing. And then, my phone buzzed again. I nearly dropped it. My fingers fumbled to unlock the screen. A new message from Ethan. But this one was different. It was an audio file. Mark's eyes widened as he saw it too. Dude! I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. Every instinct screamed at me not to do it. But I had to. I pressed play. At first, there was nothing but static. A faint crackling sound, distant and warped. And then, a voice. Low, strained, like someone struggling to speak. Help me. My blood ran cold. Mark whispered. That's him. I swallowed hard. It could be a recording. The voice came again, clearer this time. Please, I don't have much time. The message cut off. The silence that followed was deafening. Mark looked at me, his breathing shallow. What the hell do we do? Before I could answer, something slammed in the back of the store. Hard, like a body hitting a door. We both jumped. Mark's flashlight swung wildly toward the sound, catching the edge of a metal door that led to the old storage room. Another slam, louder this time, like someone or something was trying to get out. Mark took a step back. Nope, hell no. But then, the door creaked open. Just a sliver, just enough to see inside. Something moved in the darkness beyond it. Mark grabbed my arm, his grip tight. Tell me we're not going in there. I stared at the half-open door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. And then, before I could stop myself, I took a step forward. Mark swore under his breath as I moved closer to the storage room door. My body felt like it was moving on its own, pulled forward by something deeper than fear, curiosity, maybe stupidity, maybe both. The door was barely open, just enough to see a sliver of the darkness inside. The air that seeped out smelled stale, like damp wood and old rot. Mark grabbed my sleeve. Dude, what the hell are you doing? I didn't answer. Instead, I reached out and pushed the door open. The flashlight beam cut through the darkness. And then I saw it. A chair, right in the center of the storage room. And sitting in that chair was a man. Mark sucked in a sharp breath. No way. The figure was slumped forward, head hanging low, arms tied to the chair with thick, frayed rope. His clothes were dirty, tattered, like they hadn't been changed in years. His body was thin, too thin, like he'd been wasting away. But the worst part, the part that made my stomach twist into a knot, was his face. It was Ethan. He was alive, barely. His eyes fluttered open at the sound of our breathing. His lips were cracked, his voice hoarse when he whispered, "You found me." Mark looked at me, his face pale as a ghost. What the actual? Ethan's breath hitched, and he shook his head weakly. No, you don't understand. My heart slammed against my ribs. Ethan, what happened? Who did this to you? His fingers twitched. His head lolled. He struggled to form the words. And then, in a barely audible whisper, he said, I didn't send the messages. A chill crawled down my spine. Mark took a step back, his voice shaking. Then who did? A new sound filled the room. Not Ethan. Not us. Something clicking. From behind us. Near the door. Like a phone keyboard. Like someone typing. I turned. And I wasn't fast enough. A shadow moved. A sharp pain exploded in my skull. The floor tilted. My vision blurred. And as I collapsed, the last thing I saw was a hand holding a phone. A message being sent. And Mark screaming my name. A sharp ringing filled my ears, drowning out everything else. My vision swam in and out of focus, the world flickering between darkness and dim, shifting light. I was on the floor. I could feel the rough, cold tiles beneath me, smell the damp, rotting stench of the abandoned gas station pressing into my skin. My limbs were sluggish, my thoughts heavy, but the adrenaline in my veins forced me back into the moment. Mark. Where was Mark? I tried to lift my head, but pain shot through my skull like a bullet. My breath came in short, shallow gasps as I struggled to piece together what had just happened. And then I heard it. A low, rasping breath. Not mine. Not Ethan's. Someone else was in the room. I forced my head up, blinking against the blur. Mark was there, his back against the wall, his chest rising and falling rapidly. His hands were raised, trembling, and standing in front of him was a man. No, not a man. A figure. He was tall, too tall, his frame gaunt beneath a tattered hoodie. His face was mostly hidden in the shadows, but I could see the glint of his eyes. Sharp, focused, unblinking, and in his hand, a phone. The phone. The one that had been sending us messages. My stomach turned to ice. The figure tilted his head slightly, as if observing Mark like a predator watching its prey. Mark's breath hitched. "Who the hell are you?" His voice was shaky, but he was trying to sound firm, like he wasn't on the verge of bolting. The figure didn't answer. He just lifted the phone. His fingers, long and thin, moved over the screen. My phone vibrated. The sound was deafening in the silence. I hesitated, then slowly, with shaking fingers, pulled it from my pocket. A new message, from Ethan's account. "I'm here." I looked up, my pulse hammering. The figure was staring at me now. I felt the weight of his gaze, like cold steel pressing against my ribs. Ethan let out a weak, choked sound from the chair. "You!" He coughed violently, his whole body shuddering. "You need to run." The figure moved fast. Too fast. Before Mark could react, he lunged. Mark barely managed to duck as the man's arm swung toward him. Something sharp glinted in his other hand. A knife, rusted but deadly. Mark hit the ground hard, scrambling backward as the man loomed over him. I forced my body to move, ignoring the pain in my skull. I grabbed the nearest thing, a broken piece of wood from a collapsed shelf, and swung. The makeshift weapon connected with the man's side. He staggered, letting out a sharp grunt, but he didn't fall. Instead, he turned toward me, and in that moment, I saw his face fully. Thin, hollow, skin stretched too tight over his bones. But it wasn't just his features that made my stomach drop. It was his eyes, wide, too wide, and filled with something that wasn't quite madness, but wasn't quite human either. My breath caught in my throat. The man smiled. It was wrong, stretched, like he wasn't used to the motion, like his skin was too tight for his face. Then he whispered something, not to me, to his phone. He lifted it slightly, and in the dim glow of the screen, I saw him type a single message. "Come inside." My stomach turned. He wasn't sending it to me. He was sending it to someone else. And then, from outside, the sound of car doors slamming. More than one. Mark's breath hitched. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." The figure grinned wider, as if he was enjoying this. Footsteps. Multiple. Fast. Coming toward the gas station. The air inside the room seemed to tighten, like the very walls were closing in. Ethan coughed again, barely able to lift his head. "You don't understand," he rasped, his voice thin and breaking. "It's not just him. It's them." The door to the gas station creaked as someone else stepped inside. Then another, and another. Shadows filled the doorway. Figures, holding phones, all of them smiling. My blood turned to ice. Mark grabbed my wrist, his grip tight. "We need to run. Now." But I couldn't move, because my phone vibrated again. I looked down. One last message. From Ethan's account. Just 2 words. "Too late." Mark yanked me to my feet just as the first figure stepped inside. More shadows loomed behind him. I couldn't count how many. 4? 5? More? They moved in eerie unison, their phones clutched in pale fingers, their screens casting an unnatural glow on their faces. All of them were smiling, and then, in perfect sync, their phones buzzed. So did mine. So did Mark's. I swallowed hard and looked down at the screen. A new message. From Ethan's account. "Look behind you." My breath caught. I turned just in time to see Ethan standing. The ropes that had bound him to the chair were in a pile at his feet. Mark let out a sharp gasp. "What the?" Ethan took a slow step forward, his movements jerky, like he was still waking up. His eyes flickered between us and the growing crowd of people in the doorway. And then, in the weakest, most broken whisper, he said, You shouldn't have come. Mark stumbled back. Dude, what the hell is going on? Ethan didn't answer. His face twisted, as if he was fighting something inside himself. And then, his phone buzzed. His hands trembled as he lifted it. He stared at the screen like it was controlling him, like he couldn't look away. Then, with a shuddering breath, he turned his phone around. A message, but not from him. From me. I felt my entire body go cold. My stomach twisted, because I hadn't sent anything. And yet, right there on the screen, glowing in the dim light, was a message from my account. Just 2 words. Take them. Couldn't breathe. My fingers went numb around my phone. What is this? I croaked, my voice barely working. Ethan just shook his head, his eyes wide. Desperate. You don't get it, he whispered. It's not just them. It's you. The figures in the doorway took a step closer. Mark grabbed my arm. We're leaving. Now. We turned to run. But the second we moved, our phones buzzed again. I didn't want to look. But I did. A new message. This time from Mark's account. No. You stay. Mark sucked in a sharp breath as he read it, his grip tightening on my wrist like he was trying to anchor himself in reality. His voice cracked. I didn't send that. The figures in the doorway took another step forward, their smiles growing wider. And then, my phone's camera opened, by itself. The screen flickered, and suddenly, I was staring at a live video feed of Mark and me, right now. The camera was filming us in real time, capturing our terrified expressions, the dim glow of the gas station behind us. But something was wrong, because in the video, we weren't alone. There was someone standing right behind us. I couldn't move. I couldn't even scream. Mark did, but it was already too late. The lights flickered, the figures lunged, and everything went dark. I don't remember hitting the ground. I don't remember much of anything after the lights went out. What I do remember is the feeling of being dragged. My body was heavy, my limbs unresponsive, but I could feel it. The rough scrape of the floor beneath me, the pull of unseen hands gripping my arms, my legs. My head lolled to the side, my vision flickering between darkness and flashes of movement. Shadows twisted around me. Footsteps echoed somewhere in the distance. Then suddenly light. Not bright, not blinding, just a dull, buzzing glow. Fluorescent, artificial, a different place. I blinked, trying to clear my vision. I was sitting now, slumped against a wall. The room was cold, sterile, not the gas station. White tiled floors, metal walls, the hum of machines. I wasn't alone. Mark was next to me, unconscious. His head tilted forward, his breathing slow but steady. And across from us, Ethan, awake, staring. His eyes were sunken, dark circles beneath them. He wasn't bound anymore, but he wasn't moving either, just watching. Then softly, almost too soft to hear, he said, I tried to warn you. A door creaked open somewhere to my left. I turned my head too fast, pain flaring in my skull. A figure stepped inside. Not one of the people from before. Not one of those smiling, silent watchers. This one was different, calm, controlled, dressed in a lab coat. Mark groaned beside me, stirring, waking. The man in the lab coat glanced at him, then looked back at me. His expression was neutral. His voice was level. You weren't supposed to interfere. A chill ran down my spine. What? My voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. The man exhaled, as if he were disappointed. You made contact before the process was complete. I had no idea what the hell that meant. Mark coughed, blinking groggily. Where the hell are we? The man didn't answer. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone. My phone. He held it up, showing me the screen. A message. One I had never seen before. Sent from my account. 7 years ago. To Ethan. Come inside. My pulse stopped. I looked at Ethan, my breath catching. He was shaking now, his fingers digging into his arms. His lips trembled like he was trying to form words but couldn't. The man sighed. The system works best when left alone. You interrupted it. I couldn't speak. My brain was trying to put the pieces together, but nothing fit. And then, another message appeared. On all of our phones. Mark's, Ethan's, mine. A final message. You were always part of this. The lights flickered, and the door locked. The lock clicked into place. Mark jolted upright, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. No, 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 what the hell does that mean? He lunged at the door, yanking the handle, pulling hard. It didn't budge. I just sat there, staring at the screen at those words. You were always part of this. My pulse pounded in my ears. My body felt disconnected, like I wasn't really there. The man in the lab coat tucked my phone into his pocket, his expression eerily calm. This isn't how it was supposed to happen. I turned to Ethan. His hands were clenched into fists, his whole body trembling. His eyes darted between the doctor, me, and Mark, like he was realizing something. And then, softly, he said, "It was never about me." A lump formed in my throat. Ethan looked at me now, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. His breathing was ragged, his voice barely above a whisper. You don't remember, do you? The room tilted. Something shifted inside me. A memory not clear, not whole, but fractured. Like a puzzle missing its edges. 7 years ago, the last night I saw Ethan. The night he disappeared. We were at the gas station. That much I knew. That much I remembered. But what happened next? The memory came like a static-filled transmission, broken and distorted. A phone in my hand. A message being sent. To Ethan. Come inside. His voice trembled. You sent the first message. You started this. I shook my head. No, I didn't. But even as I said it, the memory slipped into place. Ethan stepping inside. The door locking behind him. The first night of his disappearance. Mark's voice wavered. Wait, are you saying? Ethan's eyes burned into me. You didn't just bring me here. A pause. You brought yourself. I felt like I couldn't breathe. My head spun, my stomach twisted. The man in the lab coat finally spoke. Now you understand. I looked back at him, at the calm, clinical way he watched us, like we were part of some experiment. My voice cracked. What is this? What did we do? He smiled, and that was the worst part, because for the first time I realized he looked relieved, like the cycle was complete. Then, slowly he pulled out his phone, typed something, and sent it. All of our phones vibrated at once. I didn't want to look. But I did. And there, on the screen, a new message. From me. I'm here. The lights cut out, and the last thing I heard was my own phone ringing.